Hello, Patrick. Thank you
Hello.
so much for joining me tonight. It is wonderful to see you, and it looks beautiful where you are.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm in the United Kingdom, just after 8 in the morning. We've got a sunny morning, beautiful summer's day.
So jealous. It's blowing a gale, and I'm waiting for it to start raining again. We did,
oh, no.
And my hair is still windblown from the puggy
Oh
walk.
dear, I'll try and send the good weather back over to you.
Yes, please.
Okay.
So thank you so much. As I was just saying before we come on to record, I received your book a couple of days ago. So I managed to read all of it and absolutely loved it. Had so much fun. But I also don't want to, spoiler alert, ruin the end. So my first question is going to be, tell us a little bit about yourself. And the book and the key characters, because there were loads through it. I loved it.
Sure. Well, I currently work as an estate manager, looking after a property in Kent in England. I did a similar job for an American family with my wife Liz about 10 years ago. So we looked after a very nice house with swimming pool, gardens, and part of our job was to look after two pugs. Two pugs they've passed over onto the Rainbow Bridge, Louie and Zuuchie. So it was then about 10 years ago when I got to know pugs for the first time, and in particular these two characters. About seven years ago, I was mowing a lawn. So what I do, part of my job, I've got a big 15 acres lawn to mow. It was a hot summer's day. I was mowing up and down. I began thinking about the two pugs and wondering if they were still around, what they were doing. And I had a cheese and ham sandwich for lunch. And somehow from that, I began thinking, I wonder if, I know they're probably not around with us now, but I think with the characters, there might be a story. And so I had the idea of writing a story. Now, I hadn't, this is my first book, so I haven't written since I was probably a teenager, where at schools I went to, we did write stories. And so the idea began to germinate. It was also the time of Brexit. We had, on this particular day, our Prime Minister, Theresa May, was having a particularly hard day. And so I began thinking, could there be a Prime Minister that could rule a country where we didn't have any problems, we didn't have any disagreements, that everyone had a good time? And I began thinking, United Kingdom, United Cakedom. Okay. So what is the United Cakedom? Well, it's an island. I live on an island, but this isn't. So then the thought's going, okay, this is not an ordinary island. This is a circular island. This is a circular island divided into 4 pieces of the same size, like the 4 quarters of a piece of cake.
Yes.
So what are these countries called then? Eggland, Sconland, Pieland, Waffles. And with my cheese sandwich, I thought, my Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is cheese sandwich. And so that was the initial idea. And as I find, I'm sure anyone who embarks on writing a story for the first time, the easy part is actually the idea. The hard part is then, well, where's the story? So I wrote probably 5 drafts over a period. Sometimes the writing flowed very quickly, sometimes it didn't. At a point when I felt I've actually got something, I then sent it to an editorial professional for some advice. And the advice that came back was very good, which was try and inject more pace into it, take out some of the adult jokes and references, try and keep it to a 30,000 word framework. So I took that advice on board, and I found, okay, now I've got a structure. Now I think I know what I'm going to do. And then the idea seemed to begin to fall into place. Where I got the specific ideas from was, I always like, the robberies and the heists and the detective things, fast-moving stories. I like film noir. I like hard-boiled detective stories. And part of that is because the writing or the dialogue are short sentences. So you're kind of moving. So I felt if I can keep that keeps me going. I'll try and write short chapters so that you finish, and hopefully as a reader you then want to go on to the next one and keep the story going. So I found eventually, it's probably only in the last 6 months that it kind of really all fell into place. So I kept my notes, kept the drafts, took out what I thought was rubbish or wasn't working, tried to keep what I hope is good, fast, hopefully amusing, and to create a story that also finishes where the next tale of Two Naughty Pugs can kick off. So I'm actually about halfway through the next tale of Two Naughty Pugs, which I've set in Egypt.
I know. I sort of, having finished reading it this morning, in preparation for this afternoon, having only just gotten it, I devoured it, because one of my questions was going to be, this feels like it's not just one book, and my question was going to be, I got to the end and I went, oh my God, now I've got to wait for the next book, which obviously is what you intended to do. But I thought my question was going to change from, is there going to be a book 2, to when am I going to see book 2?
Well, I plan initially a book a year. If the writing gets faster, then it may be quicker. But as an overall thing, I plan 5 books. Book 2, I know where it's going, so I'm halfway through. I've got the plot in my mind. I know where that's going to finish. I'm pretty certain about book 3, which is going to be called The Tower of Pizza. Ooh. Num, 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 num.
You can see Charles is licking.
Book 4, I don't know, but I know about book 5. So I kind of want to bring the story not to an end. I'm not going to do horrible things of bumping characters off, but I think 5 books in the series should be enough, because I've got another idea for another series of books that I want to write after that. So just to say, book 2, I'm really enjoying writing, and I think that's one of the things. And I felt with the writing, and it sounds very egotistical, but if I'm enjoying it, that helps me to keep motivated and to think, I want to know what's going to happen. And the only person who knows that is me. So I know I can sit down at my computer and think, okay, and I'll write something, and hopefully, and then it's then you go back and you look at things, you take the reality check, which is, have I forgotten the reader here? Am I enjoying it too much? Have I forgotten the story? Do I need to get these characters back? Are there too many characters? So there are quite a lot of questions you try and ask yourself. Best piece of advice I've had is from my wife, Liz, who, when I've got carried away, she said, well, what have you called it? Tales of Two Naughty Pugs. Well, write about the pugs. So essentially, it's that they are the heroes. They'll be the heroes of book 1. They're the heroes of book 2. Although in book 2, I've got a reasonably big role for a character called Niffy Smell. Now, you've just read the book, but I can't really talk about Niffy Smell because he's a giant pug. He's a giant pug 4 times the size of Louie and Zuuchie, and he's got this amazing power, which I perhaps won't let the reader.
No, don't give it away, because it is.
I won't give that away.
And you don't realise, you do introduce him at the start of the book, and I have to admit, initially to me, it felt like he was one of those passing characters in the plot. And then when he popped back up later in the book, I was like, I really wasn't expecting that, which was lovely.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting thing, and I think it probably doesn't spoil the plot, but how the 2 pugs meet this giant pug is I think it's often like life, that basically the pugs have been bullied. But the pugs said at a later point that everyone needs a second chance. And they then find out the reasons why this giant pug behaves the way he does. And it's Zuuchie who says, in life, everyone needs a second chance. So they give Niffy Smell this second chance, and he becomes part of this pack. And he plays quite an important role in book 2, the one that's set in Egypt. So he will play a part, but he'll only appear in book 2. So I like the idea of getting other pugs in, but I don't want to overload the story. It's always Louie and Zuuchie. Louie, who I call the criminal mastermind. He's the one who comes up with all the ideas. He's the one who's absolutely driven by a promise he's made to a lady pug, which is to get her the world's tastiest bone. Yes. And it's Zuuchie who's got all the practical skills, who helps his brother to do this. So between them, they do all these naughty things. They know they're naughty, but also they want to put things right. But what's going to happen in book 2 is the more they try and put things right, the worse it becomes for them, the bigger the trouble. So I'm enjoying that idea of, they want to give this bone to this lady pug, Lucy Lou, but there are obstacles in the way all the time. So to overcome the obstacle, they have to do something naughty again to get her the bone. Right. So, and they're literally building up this huge list of naughty things they've done, which I think come book 5, I'm thinking of a little appendix of all the naughty things they've done. They built a robot labrador. They've stolen the world's tastiest bone. So there's a lot of, I think, a lot of potential fun, potential tales, the naughtiness. And I'll always have my detective dogs, who are based on my dogs, chasing them and trying to catch them, and never quite being able to do so. So it's a kind of, I guess, a standard device, but it's fun. And so book 5 will be, do they finally catch them? And what happens with the relationship between the naughty pugs and the police dogs? That's going to be one of the little minor themes.
Oh, lovely. Because it was Inspector Pickle and Detective Biscuit.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, this Detective Pickle was the dash hound. And Inspector Pickle was the dash hound, and Detective Biscuit was the bloodhound.
Hopefully you can see these giant, it's an A3. Inspector Pickle is the bearded dachshund. And Detective Biscuit,
recognize them.
He's barking at him. And then Detective Biscuit is the bloodhound. So yes, as I mentioned to you, these dogs are based on my dogs, but my dogs are Swedish foxhounds. So anyone who doesn't know a Swedish foxhound, and that's probably 99.9% of the world, think of a beagle, but a Labrador size. And although I'd love to have used them in the book, I felt that because people aren't familiar with the breed, that the characters also needed to be different. And I think that the difference in size, most people have heard of bloodhounds, most people have heard of the sausage dog or the dachshund. And I thought that's a nice combination, in which also the inspector is Pickle, so he's Biscuit's boss. And I think that size thing is also interesting in terms of the relationship between the two. And in terms of the characters of Inspector Pickle and Detective Biscuit, Inspector Pickle always dashes to conclusions.
Oh, yes.
So there's a quick pun there on dachshund. Whereas Detective Biscuit always weighs up the evidence and thinks about things. So, and again, I won't spoil the plot, but I think there's just a little interesting thing towards the end of the book that explains a little bit about the relationship between the two. And that thing I hope to kind of, should we say, resolve a bit more in the second book, the relationship between the two dogs. So I think all the time and as the writing is developing, there are relationships between Louie and Zuuchie, the two detectives, my lovely Prime Minister Cheese and her husband Ham. And if I could quickly show, because the book's got a black and white illustration.
Oh, that's the colour one, yes.
Cheese wears a rainbow suit.
Yes.
And doesn't she look gorgeous?
I love it. I do love it.
And Ham is a writer. So that's her Prime Minister's suit. So
oh, right.
She looks, wow. Imagine your Prime Minister standing up in his...
Couldn't see him doing it, to be
honest. In the rainbow suit. Wow.
Now, the one thing that I did, as I was sort of, I loved the plot and the way it developed over the book. And it felt to me, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but it felt like almost like a pug walk, where there's always it's never a straight line. There's always these little plot twists that you sort of, things like talking about the relationship with Inspector Pickle and Detective Biscuit. Those it just reminded me of what it's like walking Rosie and Charles. It's never a straight line. There's always these sort of like, all of a sudden we're going to zip off here, all that sort of stuff, which is what I absolutely love. And the things that I sort of I loved the fact that sort of there was the romance with Miss Lucy Lou, if I remember correctly. She was the best smelling pug in Hide and Seek Park. Yes, that was what attracted Louie. And then obviously there was this cunning plan with the robot Labrador, which I love. And then things like wrongful arrests and escapes and police chases and just, you know, holidays away to, what was it, the Canine Islands?
The Canine Islands, it's a lovely
Absolutely
destination.
Loved it. There was, you are right, there is so much going on inside this book. And as I said before we started the interview, I found the entire time I was reading the book, my partner sort of would come out and say, "What are you laughing at?" And I'd be like, and I'd read paragraphs to him, and he's sort of, pugs have always been my passion. He got to marry into it, and he'd just look at me and go, "Are you serious?" And he'd walk back to whatever he was doing with a smile on his face. So he didn't even have to read the entire book to just get a little bit of I suppose, like, get the pun and the adult appreciation of what was just a fantastically written phrase. I'm just trying to think. There was one, because, of course, I tabbed my book. There were so many things that I wanted to, or I hoped to actually to say, particularly this particular one, however, using the dictionary's definition of pug and naughty, the police have enough circumstantial evidence to try not only Louie and Zuuchie, but all the pugs in the United Kingdom.
Yes, that's devastating. That is devastating. It's a bombshell.
I know.
That is so shocking for all pug owners, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh my God! Like, pugs, just everybody thinks they're naughty, and they're not.
Well, of course. Well, I don't think building a robot Labrador to steal the world's tastiest bone is naughty. I think it's something that every pug should think about.
Absolutely. We were talking before, obviously, you with Louie and Zuuchie and myself with Winston and Charles's brother. The things those two used to get up to. Now, in the book, Louie and Zuuchie were rescues.
Yes.
Winston and Charles were also, which was why I said I kept finding all these parallels for me personally.
Yeah.
But are the real Louie and Zuuchie rescues, or were they one of the lucky pugs that had a forever home to begin with?
Yeah. As I say, we looked after them for an American family, and they were one of the lucky ones. But part of the idea for the rescue home, pugs coming from the rescue home, is my wife Liz works for a local dog rescue home every Sunday. So she walks, many breeds of dogs, and of course will come back with the stories of how they got there. And some, of course, will be absolute horror stories. Some will be, well, I understand why they're there. But then you get the happy stories when the right person comes and picks up the right dog for them. So the idea of the pugs in my book coming from a rescue home was sort of based on what Liz does. And I think it's also, you know, without sounding too pompous, we can spend thousands on breeds, can't we? We can look at crafts, for example, and we can look at, you know, beautiful Pomeranians, beautiful dogs from all over the world. And then if you think, well, I want that beautiful Pomeranian, I want my dog to be that crafts level, and then you look at the prices that are there. And I often think, well, what's a dog, I think, when you see one and you're thinking of taking one, your heart has to make the leap. Not your ego, not saying, oh, I'm going to get this beautiful Pomeranian because it's unusual, it's expensive. But I think if your heart makes the leap, and vice versa, if the dog then sees you and you've got that thing, then that's what it's about. And if it comes from a rescue home, even better. If you can then give that dog hopefully a better life than it had, or in the circumstances where the owner has passed on, then continue that good life. Then you've done a great thing for the animal. And I often feel sometimes when I'm really grumpy, and I think all dog owners will say this, you can come back home, you can be the world's worst person, you can have the world's worst day, but when the big brown eyes look at you and the tail wags, there's nothing better, because you feel, the dog then makes you feel human. And that there is, you know, it's a unique relationship that people have with dogs. And I think that thing is, and so many people say, well, who's your best friend? Well, my dog is. My dog doesn't let me down. Two-legged people, you know, the two legs can do and frequently do, but the four legs, by and large, unless they steal a robot lap, world's tastiest bone and get you into trouble, don't let you down.
Now, speaking of the tastiest bone, because I don't know if this is a trade secret, and it's going to be in in the next book, but the tastiest bone is the tastiest for a number of reasons, but one of them is it has 57 herbs and spices.
Yeah.
Are we going to find out, like the KFC chicken recipe, are we going to find out what the 57 herbs and spices are?
Well, I've really enjoyed this idea, because I want to tease the reader. I might give you 56, and then I might ask you, the reader, to come up with the 57th. And the idea about that, you know, it's obviously, you know, the Heinz 57 varieties was probably running through my my head. But the key to this, the world's tastiest bone, for those who might want to read the book, belonged to an ancient Egyptian king who was a pug, and the pug's name was Tutankhamun.
Which I love.
And the world's tastiest bone was a wedding present to his queen, another pug, of course, Queen Pug Bag of Fleas. So this was his present, the world's tastiest bone. In book 2, I reveal the cook who invented it. His name is Cough Sweet. And in book 2, we're looking at, a bit I've just written, so I can't tell you. But yes, it's 57 herbs and spices. And over the years, these herbs and spices have just blended. And I think I say, from a single note or a single voice into a glorious choir of deliciousness. So where the quest for the world's tastiest bone for Louie and Zuuchie is once they get it, they are so tempted to eat the bone. But Louie says to Zuuchie and vice versa, it's for Lucy Lou, we can't have it, because when a pug makes a promise, they never break the promise. So Louie has promised to get Lucy Lou the world's tastiest bone, and that drives him throughout this little adventure. I've made a promise. Pugs don't break a promise.
No, and I had actually written that down as something, and I'd underlined it when I was reading the book. A pug always keeps their promise.
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved that line.
Yeah, yeah.
I am certain that there are pug owners everywhere that would be able to say, absolutely. As you were saying before about pugs are just, they're so unique. Although they're technically a dog, they really are a child on four legs, and there are some things for them that are just unbreakable. And when I read that line, it just went in my head. I went, oh my God, 4 pugs in my life in the last 20 years. And every one of them have intuitively lived like that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting when I first met them. So Liz and I, looking after this house, the family were going to fly over from the United States to join us. So what they did, they sent the pugs over first. So within 5 minutes of meeting us, Zuuchie, the brown pug, chose me as his human, literally within 5 minutes. So he jumped up onto a bench I was sitting, and we bonded. And so I've never met the pug before. I was told Zuuchie has had separation issues.
Oh, yes. Anxiety, yes.
Anxiety issues. And it's probably about day 2. I was having a shower and I turned round and, oh my God, what the hell is that? And it was Zuuchie had come into the shower.
Yes.
to follow me. He couldn't let me go. Bearing in mind, my job was to work on grounds and get a tennis court ready, a swimming pool ready, plant a vegetable patch, keep a house clean. Zuuchie was always there within a foot, 2 foot.
Yeah.
So he was incredibly loyal, and it was always me rather than my wife Liz who he would gravitate to. Whereas it was so interesting then with the character of Louie. So both those pugs, I think they were cousins, was the actual relationship in terms of how they were. Louie was totally different in character, was quieter. Zuuchie was the alpha male. Louie would always sit and watch, and this is the thing why I think, with the criminal mastermind idea for the book, he's always looking and observing and storing information, whereas Zuuchie was a lot more spontaneous, ebullient. Zuuchie had problems with his eyes. His vision was very poor.
Oh, yes.
So one thing that would happen, I could throw him a pine cone, he'd chase it, but then he'd be 50 meters beyond it because he couldn't see where the pine cone was. And his other interesting behavior characteristic was when an aeroplane flew over. So where we were was we worked near La Rochelle, which is near Bordeaux, comparatively near to Bordeaux in France. Zuuchie would always bark at the aeroplanes. And I would say every day an aeroplane came up, Zuuchie, aeroplane, see it off, get that plane out of the sky. And he'd say, I said, good boy. Chasing that nasty aeroplane out of the sky. So he was great fun, and very, very quick story. The idea for the character of Niffy Smell, who politely has a very powerful bottom.
Yes.
Came from a day I had to go to the supermarket, I think, and Zuuchie came with me. He sat in the passenger seat. I was on a big major road in France, and all of a sudden, Zuuchie's bottom spoke to me. And how I didn't cause an accident that day, I do not know. I was desperate to find the window, to get the windows open. One of the kind of running jokes I have in the story, The Great Bone Robbery, is the detectives always take clothes pegs in case suspects get anxious and start farting. So that's a sort of running joke. Oh, where are the clothes pegs? Where are the clothes pegs? Boom. And the pugs use that the power of their bottom wind in fairly early on when they're being questioned by the police, and it's it's a good tactic to help them as the story progresses.
Yes, no, I love that, and I have to admit, I think everyone who's watching this interview, they're all going to be doing what I was just doing, which is laughing, having experienced at least once. I have to admit, Rosie and Charles are more full-face sneezing pugs, but every now and again, if there's something that upsets their tummy, God help you.
It is literally impossible to describe in human terms. But it is, it can destroy buildings, I think. And
my father used to say, how can that come out of something so small?
Yes. I feed them proper food, and yet the end product. Oh
no! It was lovely because before we started, we were talking about the fact that, like my Winston, who was a gobble pug, very gutsy. Would do similar things as Louie, and somehow manages to get on tables. And I've got one pug mum from playgroup. She has a Pugalier, which is a pug cross cavalier. She caught him climbing up a bookshelf, which was next to the kitchen table. And then stretch his body over. I'm amazed that this shelf hadn't tipped over. But she managed to she had a phone in her hand, luckily, and started to record because she said she was so shocked that Gerald could do this. He climbed up, got onto the table, and then basically started to devour a chicken that she was planning on a roast chicken.
Shouldn't laugh. That's really naughty.
I know, it's really naughty, but at the same time, you just look at it and go, how? How did they come up with this?
Yeah, well, exactly, isn't it? It's so interesting. It's working out the route. Okay, what's the aim here? Is to get the chicken. How am I going to do that? That the thought process is, pure naughtiness.
100% in. There's no I am sure as he was climbing up that bookshelf, he must have thought, I'm going to fall backwards. And it was like, it's worth the go.
Yeah. Oh dear. Very naughty.
Insane. So I like to end all of my conversations with all of my guests with a question, because obviously I love dressing my pugs. And one of the things that I loved reading through the book was the number of outfits that Louie and Zuuchie changed throughout the time. So hopefully it won't give away too much of the storyline, but I wanted to know, what is their favourite outfit?
Suits.
It is suits. Fabulous.
They love wearing tailored suits.
It's a good thing they're the pugs of the Prime Minister then.
Yeah. They're both about their appearance very, very vain. In the book, I give them hair, and so let's see.
Yes, I was going to say.
My illustrator did a very good job. It's actually a little bit difficult to see, but Louie parts his hair to the right, and Zuuchie parts his hair to the left. They're both very fond of hair products. They're wax, gel, that sort of thing. So ideally, they like suits. They always feel naked when they're not in suits, and for most of the story, they are naked. But at some point, they wear onesies. Yes. They also wear swimming trunks when they're on holiday in the Canine Islands, and then there's hopefully a fun thing with what happens with the swimming trunks.
I can't wait for
they have to leave the island very quickly.
Yes, I can't wait for people to read that part and comment
and
on it.
I really like the idea of them using their swimming trunks in that way.
Yes.
So they absolutely love suits, and they're not in suits in the second book, but they are in disguise, because once again they're on being chased by the detective dogs. But second book, my goodness, they've been even naughtier. They really have. So I'm about at the halfway point, and I think there's some chuckle giggle stuff there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I'm enjoying it anyway. I hope other people will. If nobody else enjoys it, well, I'm happy anyway. So I keep myself amused.
Absolutely. I can't believe we have to wait until next year before we see it, even though my mother used to say anticipation is 9/10 of the fun.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so interesting with the second book, when I met my illustrator, who's got this wonderful name, Alex Strange, and when we first met, he said, yes, it is a strange surname, isn't it? And I instantly liked his work. I met him at Spitalfields Market in London, where he's a graphic designer, illustrator, and I really, really liked his work. And I thought, yeah, you're the chap I'd really, really like to do the cover. And why this was so important for me is when I was writing the book, I couldn't, although I'd written the story, I was finding it difficult to actually visualize the characters. Apart from Louie and Zuuchie, Cheese Sandwich, I hadn't quite got in my head how she looked.
Yeah.
So for me, it was so important to have somebody who actually got the story, and by that I mean the world of the United Kingdom, the fact that it's a cartoon world. Although I set it in the United Kingdom, second book is set in Egypt, so I will use real geographical locations as well. But what Alex got was the world of the United Kingdom, and if it's okay, just to quickly talk about this brilliant cover.
Yes, yes.
So the story is set in Egdon. Whoops, let me get that.
Yeah.
And I said, Alex, create something that's Egdon, which is essentially based on London. So he did the clock Big Ron, which is made out of sponge cake. That's based on Big Ben in London. The Egdon pretzel, that's based on the London Eye. The cheese grater, we do have a building that we nickname the cheese grater, but obviously that's a reference then to Cheese Sandwich.
Yeah.
He's done a great job on the Museum of Bones.
Yes.
Got this giant bone across there. And when you look at the cover closely, you'll see the detail of the statues that he's made dogs. And then the key message, no pugs.
I know.
So this is essentially the problem that the pugs have. They want to steal the world's tastiest bone. It's in the Museum of Bones. No pugs are allowed, but Labradors are. So build a robot Labrador to get in is the solution that Louie comes up with to then steal the bone.
Just the criminal mastermind.
Yeah, and just one further point. Zuuchie here is holding a bottle of chuckle gas, which he's stolen from a dentist. And again, that plays an important role. So if anyone's looking at the cover thinking, I wonder what that is, chuckle gas or laughing gas.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's wonderful.
So Alex has also got the cover idea for the next one, which is going to be lovely.
Awesome. No, I can't wait to see. I did when I got the book, it was nice to actually have the book as opposed to, obviously he sent me all the pictures for the opening video.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I got the book that I could truly appreciate the cover and the detail that has sort of gone into it. Even though I have to admit, in my mind, Louie and Zuuchie were Winston and Charles. I couldn't help myself.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's interesting as long as you're reading and you're imagining that these events could happen. Yeah, that's great. Yes,
I would believe these two after what they've gotten up to over the years. Yes, I'm talking about you, puppy. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I had such a wonderful time. And as I said, I loved reading your book. And I'm going to really enjoy reading it to my godchildren when I see them next. I'm going to send it up before I actually get to see them because they live in Sydney and I'm obviously in Melbourne. Yeah. But it's just a final plug. Where can everyone find your book and where can they find you on social media?
Yes, the book, Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk. I know there are a couple of Australian online retailers. I can't remember the names at the moment, but the easiest thing to do is go onto Google, type in the title Tales of Two Naughty Pugs, and that will come up. So essentially it's available online from Amazon, Waterstones, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Foyles, Waterstones. There's even, I found it so interesting that the publisher has managed to get the book listed in Japan,
oh, wow.
Denmark, other parts of the world, France. But essentially, you know, look for the well-known ones, Amazon, Walmart, Waterstones.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is in Aussie dollars. In US dollars, it's £9.50, £6.99 in UK sterling.
I can't remember what I paid. I'll have to go back and check. I was happy to buy the book because I actually, because we sort of met originally through Facebook. So, and your social accounts are called.
Oh, sorry. Social accounts. Facebook is my favourite in terms of I use it every day. I'm amazed to see that I've got 4,000 and something friends, which is astronomical. Looking at some of your previous videos, I recognise some of the names like Minnie Crow.
Oh, lovely! Yes,
springs to mind straight away. I love her name, and I think I might use that name with her permission at some point.
I'll have to. So we lost Minnie at the start of the year. She was 18.
Oh.
So her mum Elvie still runs her Facebook page.
Okay.
But yeah, Elvie and Minnie used to come to our play group. So Elvie still has. So Minnie had a younger brother called Jackie, and he's a pocket rocket. Wow. He would almost be Louie intelligent, I would suspect. But Minnie was wonderful. Yeah.
Well, one thing I will be asking Facebook friends for. I love getting, of course, ideas, but sometimes you get names, words, ideas from other people.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking in book 3, I want 2 getaway drivers, because I'm putting the pugs in a situation where they're once again needing to escape from the police, but they need 2 dogs who can drive quickly and get them out of a big situation. So the characters I'm thinking of initially are French bulldogs, because in terms of a kind of plot is they can look similar to pugs.
Yes.
And I kind of want to use them as a decoy so that my pugs can escape and do further naughty things. So what I'll be asking people for is I haven't at the moment got names for those characters. I'd be really, really interested. And I think what I'll probably do is some sort of giveaway, which is, again, signed copy of the book. Give me a couple of names, the favourite names, and it's not a promise, but if they're helping to excite my imagination and I really, really like them, then I'll give a signed copy to those names. So Minnie Crow, I absolutely love that name.
Oh, yes.
And maybe that'd be a sort of nice way of also, perpetuating the memory.
Your old Minnie.
And if then I get some ideas as to the character of Minnie Crow, I might be able to adapt those into a character of a getaway driver, and that's going to be fun, I think.
Oh, absolutely! I'll keep an eye out for it. I'll have to keep thinking. And
so 2 getaway drivers. Yeah.
2 getaway drivers, and they're Frenchies.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. I really appreciate your time. As I said, I loved reading the book, and I've loved having a chat with you and getting some of the backstories behind the characters, both real and made up. Good luck with the next book. I am fingers crossed. Can't wait to see it when it comes out, and hopefully I'll be able to get you back on so we can talk about the next.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been great fun, and I hope everyone in Australia gets over the lockdown situation which we've undergone in perhaps to a lesser extent than you have, and I think part of the idea of writing the book, or I think what helped me, was trying to deal with what's happening around the world and in our own local countries. And again, probably sounds cliched, but I think reading funny things, humorous things, things that can stimulate the imagination are good for us. And if we can try and focus on the good and the happy things in life, then we're going to be better people.
Absolutely. No, it definitely brought a smile to my face while I was reading it, so I can vouch for that. Thanks so much, Patrick, and we'll hear from you soon.
Great. Thank you, Donna, and thank you, everyone. Thank you.